Our keynote speaker, and he's passionate about building high-performing teams, turning promised ideas into reality, and helping people around him get better. He's a sought-after speaker and a thought leader on social selling. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, having found and grown and sold several companies. He brings a unique perspective, and we're sharing his thoughts on the ever-changing trends in sales and what he sees us heading. Please join me in welcoming the Global Head of Sales for LinkedIn, Mr. Mike Daredson.
Hello everyone, it's great to be here. And the topic we're going to talk about today is social selling. And what I want to do is share with you a precursor of why we're in this place we are today, what's happening, what are some of the best companies in the world doing here, and what are some specific things each of you can bring back to execute better on social selling. In terms of introductions, I'm the global head of sales of a group called Sales Solutions, not of overall LinkedIn. We actually have 3 revenue lines at LinkedIn. We have our hiring solutions business, now known as our talent solutions business. This is our set of products we sell to recruiters. We have a marketing solutions business. And then our third business is premium subscriptions. This is where individuals have upgraded their LinkedIn accounts for more premium and advanced features and functionality. As of a year ago, we didn't have a sales solutions offering. And that changed a year ago because what we found was one of the biggest groups of people who were buying these premium subscriptions were salespeople, inside salespeople. And this was without LinkedIn doing anything specific to really help those professionals. And so as of a year ago, we launched this new group called Sales Solutions. Our flagship product, Sales Navigator, we're taking social selling to the next level. And we now have a dedicated sales team that I head up for this effort. So why don't we kickstart? Why are we all here today talking about social media? Well, I think that's been driven by 3 main trends that have happened in the buying process. So B2B customers have fundamentally changed, and they've done so in 3 ways. One is they're far more informed now than they were 5-10 years ago. There's lots of stats that we all have about this. One that many people talk about is the Conference Executive Board has found that 57% of the decision-making process now happens before a salesperson's actually reached out to. And this has fundamental implications because before we used to have a lot of the information as salespeople, and now our buyers in many cases are more informed than us in some situations, and they come to us late in the game for pricing and features, and we miss the opportunity to shape the solution. And this is very, very different than where we were 5-10 years ago. Second one is they're less responsive to traditional means. I know this group, we hear this all the time about cold call rates plummeting, voicemail response rates plummeting, email response rates plummeting. And so how do we get through with this barrage of these traditional means? It's increasingly harder. I saw one stat, cold call response rates are dropping 15% year over year. So that's a lot of ground to make up. And then finally, they're socially empowered. I don't think I need to share stats about this. How many of us are here on LinkedIn or have a LinkedIn profile? Please raise your hand. Okay, so almost, it looks like 80–90% of us all are here, at least have a LinkedIn profile. So this is all fundamentally different than just 10 years ago. Really paradigm shifts here. And as we think about that, this is pretty obvious. If the buying process has changed, doesn't the sales process have to change? I mean, this is a big opportunity. Whenever there's a fundamental transition, there's winners and losers. This happens in every industry. And so the question is, how are we going to change? Like, what's the response for the sales world in these growing trends? And there's increasing evidence that it's social selling that changes the game. So for example, there's plenty of stats here. Here we have the Conference Executive Board. They just released their study in their Challenger model. They found that the #1 indicator for a top performer to move from 25th percentile to 75th percentile is social media adoption. Another data point, Aberdeen Group talks about here that the best social selling, the best in-class companies use social media 144% more for sales. And I could go into example after example about some of the leading companies. There's some cutting-edge companies like Marketo and Eloqua. Marketo's increased their outbound sales rates by 4x once they really embrace social media. Eloqua is another leading example. They've increased their conversion rates by 25% when they moved from lead to opportunity through social media. And I mean, these companies they're hiring people based on sales reps' profiles. They're certifying their profiles, doing some really, really innovative things here. These are the leaders in the space. And it's not just limited to high-tech companies. We also see traditional blue-chip companies starting to really have some success. IBM has done some really interesting things here. They had a pilot, and the reps that were on the social media pilot, they increased their traffic to their seller profiles by 2x in 1 month. Truly extraordinary. Morgan Stanley, another example, they had a pilot with some of their financial advisors and found that 40% of them got business through social media in, I think it was 1 or 2 months. And now they're rolling out to 17,000 financial advisors. So the data here is becoming increasingly convincing that social media is very significant for sales. Now, the next question here is that social media is it's not just the facts that say it, but we ourselves believe it. So almost 75% of us, actually more than 75% of us, believe this to be true, that this can be the solution to turbocharge sales. Yet, however, few of us are embracing it today. But basically, these few of us are embracing it, so less than a third of us have actually done it. So isn't this an interesting phenomenon happening? We have data that now shows social selling is the way forward. We actually believe it to be the case, yet few of us in this room are really doing it. Isn't that odd? I mean, this is an opportunity, one of those unique opportunities, I think, to really be a leader in this space. So many of us find, where do you get started? And you know, the surveys that we've seen, and those last surveys were done through Sales Management Association, they also found that many of us believe that LinkedIn is the place to do it. And you know, we understand that social media can happen in a whole bunch of areas, but it's hard to think that the bullseye, the center, the place to start isn't LinkedIn, because this is the professional network. This is where exclusively professional context is happening. And what I'm going to do is, before I dive into how specifically we can tap into this as sales leaders and professionals, let me just give a little bit of a backdrop of what's going on at LinkedIn. So the first thing here is LinkedIn's mission, where it all starts. LinkedIn connects the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And by far, the most important word here is professional. Of all of the handful of companies that connect millions of people in milliseconds, we're the only ones that have a sole and exclusive professional context. And we see over and over again that we want to separate our social and our professional networks. And this is why LinkedIn is thriving today. There's very different context happening on LinkedIn. And it all starts with our member value prop. We have 3 member value props: identity, insights, and everywhere. Let me quickly jump into some of these, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what some of the main use cases are today on LinkedIn. So identity, where you're to connect, find, and be found. So your LinkedIn profile is increasingly your professional profile of record. As we think about, we're evolving as sales professionals into mini marketers. We need to think of ourselves that way. We need to think about how we're going to brand ourselves. And what's happening is, when your name is now pulled into a search engine, typically your name is coming in one of the top 2 or 3 results is going to be your LinkedIn profile. This is how your customers, and for those of you sales managers, this is how your reps, they're being perceived by their customers. They're going right in and doing Google searches and finding them. And the more that people are updating their profiles, the more they become higher in the search engines. And this dynamic goes on. And it's not just happening on search engines, it's increasingly happening on LinkedIn. There's now over 5 billion search queries per year. So this is where your profile, where your professional brand is being accessed. And what's happening on LinkedIn that's really never happened before, it's extraordinary, are people are updating their profiles when they're not looking for work. Think about that. When's the last time you updated your resume when you weren't looking for work? And that's happening now on LinkedIn. And so the amount of information and content that's coming through the system is truly extraordinary. We've never seen this in all of humanity, where we're having all this information refreshed by ourselves in a public setting. And as a result, we're able to do some really amazing things with insights. It all starts with the LinkedIn homepage. This is increasing where professionals are coming, their professional dashboard, to take stock of the news, information, and insights that are relevant in their network. There's now over 2 billion of these updates happening per week. It also happens with insights. So this is where your customers are going. Remember I talked about that 57% statistic. This is actually in many places, some of the places that they're coming to get better at the job they're already in and learn about. There's over 1 million professional groups now on LinkedIn. And finally, the LinkedIn Today. This is where since we know who you are, we know your network, we know who you're connected to, we can take a pulse from hundreds and thousands of news articles and hand deliver to you the news that's most relevant for you. And so what many people think is that LinkedIn may be a job site. That is, yes, we do help people find their dream job. But did you know that 5x the amount of engagement is happening for people trying to get better in their current job? So your buyers, your customers, they're coming to LinkedIn largely not to look for work, but to get better at the jobs they're in, get information and insights to help them do their jobs better. And actually, and I left out the homepage. If you include the homepage, the LinkedIn engagement is over 10x more about insights as opposed to looking for a dream job. And so think about that with your customers. And then finally, we recognize we need to bring LinkedIn where our members work. And increasingly, we're less tethered to our desktop. And you're seeing a significant investment in mobile. And this is our fastest growing service. Almost a quarter of our traffic now is happening on mobile. And this number continues to skyrocket. And so essentially, the power of LinkedIn has this virtuous cycle. Basically, what this cycle had is it all started with the member growth and engagement. And as a result of that member growth and engagement, we're able to get this insights that then creates more data and services. And this cycle goes on. And it happens to result in incredible growth. So LinkedIn is now at 175 million members. Actually, we just had our quarterly call, and it jumped to 187 million members. We're running at 2 members per second. And actually, this number's out of date too. I think we're at 140 million uniques. We're now the 25th largest website in the world. So given all this content and all this virtuous dynamic that's going on, we're in a unique place to help the inside sales industry really accelerate sales in a way that we've never been able to do before. And let me kind of walk you through how we're doing that and what's happening with social selling. So social selling, we believe, changes the game. And we think it does that in 3 ways I'm going to talk about: finding, relating, and engaging. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about just free LinkedIn as what's happening there as just the world's best sales tool that's ever existed, and encourage you to really follow some of these tips as a free LinkedIn member and for your teams to get a lot out of LinkedIn and social selling. I'm also going to highlight a few of the areas that we're going a whole nother distance with our product called Sales Navigator, which we believe is the future of social selling. So let's dive in each of these 3 one at a time. So if we talk about finding your decision makers, one of the key things that's so important is this concept of multi-threading. How many of us as sales reps get a lead and we just focus on that one individual? And as a sales manager, that drives me crazy when I hear that from my team. You know, you got stuck on this one person. It's been 4 months. And as we're moving more to a consensus sale and there's more and more stakeholders, it's critical to multi-thread. It's critical to build out an org map. It's critical to get more and more of these people in here. And particularly if you know someone in common. You know, my approach and what we espouse is just because you have say the CFO you're trying to sell into is not necessarily where you start. Maybe start with a leader in marketing or a leader in sales that someone on your team knows very well and can start teeing up for you the landscape. But instead, so many of us are just still pounding the one name we have. And you know, that shouldn't happen. Free LinkedIn changes that. Your teams, you and your teams need to be using LinkedIn for every deal, for every account. You should be looking to build out more people to get that context on that account. And then we're going to take it a lot further in Sales Navigator. For example, we've created Lead Builder, so you can build a lead list. So let's say I'm trying to build a lead list, and I can do things like company named accounts, function, seniority, company size. And I can really drill in a way that I couldn't before, even on LinkedIn. And let's say I wanted to reach out to the executives at DocuSign. And you can see here I've got a search for VP or CXO at DocuSign and 29 results. And you see here that number, you'll see next to these names we have a little a 1 and you can barely see that in the blue there, but we have number signs here, which is first or second degree. The game is a second degree. That means there's someone between you and that person that can broker a warm introduction. That's what we want to look for. And so the other thing that happens as well is when you come across a profile, in this case, that first person here, which was Mike Dinsdale, who's the CFO in this case at DocuSign, we also show you people of this profile have also viewed, which is another great way of building out who else you might want to talk to in that company. And then finally, one of the other things that we do in Sales Navigator now is we open up to your third degree in a way that as a free member you don't have. So in this particular case, I have 1,281 first degree connections, and that jumps to 623,000 second degree connections. But you notice the third degree jumps to 12 million. So that's 20x the visibility. So really allowing you to tap more and more into LinkedIn to see more and more about your accounts. And then relate is another really critical one. How many of us go into a call and don't do the minimal amount of homework? Shame on us. That should never happen. You should never have a call without looking up that professional on LinkedIn. It takes a minute or two, yet many of us don't do it. That is a real low-hanging fruit. So remember what's going on in the LinkedIn profile. We're continuing to beef it up. Here you see, here's a gentleman, again, from DocuSign named Damon Mino. And here you notice his activities. He's hiring for a technical support representative. Now, if I wasn't connected to him, which, by the way, is another thing that's important, you must connect to your customers. Because I'm connected to him, I'm now seeing jobs he's posting and things that he's updating, and more connection points to have a better conversation with him, particularly if not only just for prospecting, but if I'm trying to grow the account. And we can see now skills and expertise that we can connect to, education. We've got additional info. He's passionate about chess, surfing, politics, and the groups he's in. This is where that learning is taking place in places like LinkedIn. And so that's a phenomenal place to start. And again, it's low-hanging fruit, and you should all be taking advantage of that for every sales call. We're taking it further. We're now bringing the LinkedIn profile into the CRM, in CRMs such as Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce. Here's a typical lead record. I might have that name like Damon Minos, like from that last example, title VP in a company called SalesCrunch. Okay, and I'm just calling on, maybe I have an email or phone number, and all of a sudden it goes dead or quiet or so forth. Well, the LinkedIn profile now in Sales Navigator comes in real time and brings you the whole profile right where you work. And what's interesting, again, it's hard to see here because of the size, but here it now says he's a director at DocuSign. Past, it says VP of Sales at SalesCrunch. So we're actually helping improve now the accuracy of your data and your CRM, because once a lead goes into your CRM, it becomes stale. But remember what I was talking to you about with the LinkedIn profile. It's constantly refreshed. It's a living, breathing thing that we're updating when we're not looking for work. And so we're seeing a lot of people doing social selling now really get that information about any changes. And for example, here for an account, say I'm working on DocuSign, I can see position changes, new titles, departures, promotions, and so on. And now I have, as you know, this is an incredible trigger point to break open a new sale. I can't tell you how many times we hear customers come and say, I had no idea my former customer now joined this company, and I knew right away. Incredible insights. And let me talk about the third one, engage, which is one I'm perhaps most passionate about, which is, let's think about your company's network. So this is an in-map. Essentially, each of us have this. This showcases here, each dot represents someone you're connected to on LinkedIn, okay? And what we have here is, imagine this is you, and imagine these are your colleagues. Imagine you have 10 colleagues. So this colleague must have 1,000 connections, maybe 500, 1,000. Think of all these. Each little dot could be one of your customers or a prospect. It could be someone's in your company's sister. It could be someone in your company's former classmate from business school, grad school, you name it. And I think if you think about these, if you look at these as almost like, think of relationships as oil or gold, right? These are like deposits that are so valuable, but just like oil, if they're not tapped, because they're beneath the surface, they're wasted. And isn't it a shame how little we are using our own company's networks, particularly medium and large-sized companies? It's extraordinary what we see. When we're not connected and we're not leveraging our company's network, what does that look like? Be honest, it looks to me like that big block phone with that mobile phone I was talking about. What it means is we see people sending us emails to 1,000 people. Does anyone know someone at VMware? Does anyone know someone at Cisco? I mean, we see lots of these examples of people sending this out. I've seen examples of top 5 financial services company in the world spent millions and millions of dollars to build a who knows who system in their company, where literally people are going to upload all their connections onto a wiki or some sort of intranet every time they have a new connection and share that with the company, with tens of thousands of people. Granted, that didn't work, but yet all those relationships are actually on LinkedIn, but they're not tapped. And many of you think, oh, well, I'm connected with my company, and therefore I do see them. That's actually not the case for most of us. That's not the case. So for example, here we have 10 colleagues. Imagine it's 1,000, but I'm here connected, for me personally, I'm connected to 1 out of 10 people at LinkedIn. So I have 350 connections at LinkedIn, and there's 3,500 employees. And I'm LinkedIn, and we're living and breathing this, and I'm connected to 10% of my company. I don't know the other 90%, right? And I don't know if I want to connect with all of them because I don't necessarily know them personally. And for large companies, we see less than 1% are connected. So basically what that means is that these oil deposits are completely left fallow. And as we talked about in that video about the power of technology, that can change now. So imagine if you could find out everyone in your company who their relationships are. Well, that's all now possible. And so what we've done now in LinkedIn is through a feature called Team Link, which is part of Sales Navigator, we can now bring your entire network and your company together. And again, this is extraordinary change in the world because this has never been possible before. And so how does that work? The simplicity is what's so powerful. Let's say here I want to get in touch with a VP of sales at Groupon. Well, here you'll notice Team Link, this yellow box, there's three women here who say I could get introduced through Team Link. This first woman here, Christina, I know. I'm not sure if I'm first degree connected to her or not. I don't know these other 2 people. Never heard of them before last night until I pulled up this slide. So Nicola Christopherson, she's a colleague in Australia. I don't know her. I mean, we're hiring people all the time. People are coming and going. How would I know? Anyway, that's happening now. So let me give some examples of where social selling is going and how this can totally be transformational. I'm going to give 2 stories of success stories and 1 unfortunate story. So here's 2 success stories. One is, remember that example of Mike Dinsdale at DocuSign, CFO? Through Team Link, someone was losing a deal. They didn't know Mike at his company. They saw he was connected through Team Link and basically reached out, and it turns out they were old sailing buddies. And they ended up having dinner, and he turned the deal around. Great story. We had a story of someone in APAC getting a multi-million-dollar deal because they didn't know someone in the US had gone to graduate school with the ultimate decision maker. So every day, as we're calling on people, there could be someone in your company that could broker that warm introduction, yet it's not really happening. And then an unfortunate story is when it doesn't work, one of the top 3 software companies in the world, they do deal reviews. And when they went through the deal review, the executive told me his face went pale when he heard the story because he found the name and he's like, oh, that was an old college friend of mine. And he wanted to strangle the rep. Why didn't you pull me in? And then he realized, well, we have over 50,000 people in the company. How was he supposed to know? So those are the kind of things that aren't surfaced. So to kind of bring it home, let's leave with some specific tips to help you guys walk away for the rest of the quarter that hopefully you can apply in Q4. So here's some tips for beginners. So first, find. You need to make sure that your profiles are 100% complete. Put in your photos. This is your personal brand. This is your opportunity to showcase yourself to your customers. Don't write it for a recruiter. Write it for a customer. They don't want to hear how you went to President's Club. They want to hear how you're passionate and you want to help your customers. Go back and rewrite your thing and write it as if the voice is to your customer. This is very low-hanging fruit. Relate. Here's a simple one. Post at least 3 status updates a week. This doesn't take a lot of time. Just comment, or share an article that you're already seeing in your newsfeed. This gets you out there as a leader of insights and intelligence and elevates your game. And that's important to do if first you're connected to your customers and your prospects. How many of us here are personally connected to or think their sales teams are connected to at least 50% or more of their customers? Anyone? LinkedIn team, I want to see your hands up. All right, thank you. All right, this is low-hanging fruit. I can't tell you how many deals we see because we're in the middle of a sales process and we connect with our customers. We don't just barge them after a meaningful conversation, and we'll post an update on a video or a case study or a thought or white paper, and it engages them in a very low-hanging fruit type of way. And so these are 3 tips for beginners. For some of you here who are further along who have Sales Navigator, couple quick tips here. Always use for every account, you want to use Lead Builder and multi-thread into all of your accounts. You have multiple people that you can speak to at once. In terms of relating, you can save searches, those searches that I showed you. You need to be saving those because they can provide you with alerts when someone new has come into that company or has been promoted. Very, very powerful way to increase sales. And then finally, engage. Never just reach out cold. Always go through a second degree or a team link connection. I can't tell you how time and time again these are missed opportunities. We see people in companies reaching out coldly when someone in their company had a first degree connection and basically just missed that opportunity. In some cases it was someone's sister. This happens all the time. And then for sales leaders, 3 specific tips to walk away. Lead by example. Some of us still think that LinkedIn is a job site. That is not true, as I had talked about earlier. You need to get out there, showcase your profile, ask them what are they doing with LinkedIn, ask them who they specifically have looked at on LinkedIn. Finally, unify. It's important to get your executive team on. Your executives, you and your executives have the best relationships. I can't tell you how many times we have customers, our senior leaders are the ones who are brokering most of these important relationships. If you're not connected on LinkedIn, then that lays fallow. Your team cannot leverage those relationships. And then finally, measure. How do we do this? How do we get up to speed? Well, one thing that we've come up with is a social selling index. We've measured for companies that have about 25 sales reps or more. We actually can give you a score of how well you're doing in social selling. We can track that over time. And my team is actually, or our head of marketing is leading a breakout session at 1 that's going to go into more depth around your social selling index. And we can provide you more information and help you along the way. And then here's 2 other links for more information about getting more up to speed on how to use LinkedIn for selling. And the last one in particular, you might want to write down training.linkedin.com/sales, as that's a great place to get started, and we provide you our best tips on B2B social selling. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here.